Did you see the movie The Bucket List? It came out in 2007 and it starred Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson. It was a wonderful movie, really kind of funny. The storyline, though, was of two men who met in a hospital where they were ill and dying, and one of them was making up a list of things that he'd like to do before they died. And the other got a hold of the list and decided that he would add his own things to it. It was a great story, and at the end of their lives, these two men went about the world doing all kinds of crazy adventures. But it also had a much deeper meaning because they weren't just chasing those things they wanted to do before they died. They were chasing after something that had eluded them all of their lives, a meaningful relationship. Freeman with his wife, Nicholson with his daughter, but really both of them with each other, a friendship that they never were able to have. What they had to do, and what they did through their adventures, was to experience what I like to call movements of the heart, the joy, the peace, the sadness, the anger, the fear, all those kind of things that happen in our lives, but which we tend to lock away in our hearts for whatever reason throughout the course of our lives. Now, first and foremost, prayer is about a relationship. It's about a relationship with God. A relationship that God initiates by inviting us into his divine love, a place where we will find peace and healing and forgiveness. But prayer is also a mutual thing. It's a two-way street. God does something, we respond. It's a mutual loving and knowing. God wants to know and love us, you and me. And he wants you and I to know and love him. He offers himself to us, and we must do the same. In the School of Prayer, there are 4 essential habits for a meaningful prayer life. 4 things that you and I must do in order to pray and to have an effective prayer in our lives. And the first of these essential habits is to acknowledge. Yeah, acknowledge what, right? Well, acknowledge the movement of your heart and to become aware of, to name, to see the thoughts, the feelings, the desires of your heart, the joy, the sorrow, the pain, the suffering, the anger, the fear. Not to criticize them, not to analyze those things, just to simply acknowledge them. Of course, the problem is we often lock those things away in a safe, as it were, and throw away the key. We live in our heads, in other words. We don't live in our hearts. And we live in our head where it's easy to say, God, I want this, God, I want that, but not what you have to offer me. Just give me what I want. It's as if there's I like to think of it this way, trap door in our neck. We've locked it and we can't get out of our head and into our heart. We need help. In the gospel, Jesus says, you are looking for me because you ate the loaves and were filled. Do not work, he says to the crowd, for food that perishes. It's that bucket list. It's that trap door that we've locked between our head and our heart. I'm looking for things that are fleeting, things that, well, perish because it's only for a moment. And Jesus says, and he goes on to say, the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. God gives us something more. God gives us what we need to open that trap door, to get from our head to our heart. And of course, the crowd that he says this to says, well, sir, give us this bread. We want it. Jesus says, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never hunger. Whoever believes in me will never thirst. Jesus is the key to unlock that trapdoor to your heart. Jesus is the one who will ultimately bring us into a meaningful relationship with God. And that's what he offers us. So, what's going on in your heart right now? What are your joys? What are your fears? What gives you peace? What causes sadness and anger? What is it that you really and truly desire? Acknowledge these things. Don't criticize them. Don't analyze them. Simply acknowledge them. That's the first habit of prayer. Your homework this week is to take time to examine your bucket list, what you're really looking for in life. What are the movements of your heart? Oh, and I promised a quiz too, didn't I? Here it is. Where does prayer start? Well, if you forget, that's okay. I'll tell you, it starts with God. We will have a quiz next week on this week's School of Prayer.